Greetings, Metanthropes, and welcome to Legitcast Episode 3, where we have a little chat with other zinequest participants, zinequest creators participating in zinequest 2025, and dig their thoughts about their game and the process of creating games. I'm your host and narrator, John, and today we are joined by, not live chat, I haven't changed that name, by Georg of Causa Creations. Greetings.
Greetings.
Changing your name, apologies, there we go. It's a bit unaligned, but it's all good. So you have an amazing campaign going on, but also an amazing franchise, an amazing game. And just today, researching a little bit about your game, a few moments ago really, I've discovered that your game was a board game initially, right?
Yeah, so I actually come from digital game design, and I was really frustrated with the absolute mess that digital game design is. It's very complex and it's very technical. And then I'm a narrative designer, so I was always stuck with like a extremely complicated project. So I started this side project of mine, which was like a tarot card based board game. And I collaborated with really talented artists from Vienna, Elliot Baum and Viv Tanner. And we just made a few cards and we made a concept, and then it became quite popular. And on Twitter, back in the days when Twitter was still a force of good, and it was also commercially good for us. And then we did a Kickstarter and it fairly well. It made like 400,000 euros for a board game. The board game wasn't really good, I have to say. I think it was all right. I think it's very interesting for people who are into tarot, because it's kind of a mix of board game and divination. So I would say it's not like a super great game concept, but it's very unusual and it's very, very particular. We made a better version in the meantime, but what we did was that we placed the entire lore of the cards on like a piece of fiction that we created. So it was essentially like an alternative 16th century with magic, where you priestesses of Hecate and an Egyptian magician, they went to this island after being persecuted, and from there they essentially created like a haven for the misfits and heretics. And from there they fight the Inquisition, they fight the colonizers. And the 16th century is a great place for that, because there's a lot of Inquisition, a lot of colonizers. And it's magic, gunpowder. The gunpowder kingdoms also exist in the Middle East. So this piece of lore was already in our hand, and when we were done with the board game and the tarot cards, these were very popular, especially this gold edition. We were like, what's the possible next step? And we were like, yeah, to infinity and beyond, let's make a tabletop role-playing system. As you do. I think we had a little bit of money in our pocket by then, because it's very expensive, of course, to create such a system. And we worked with one of our narrative designers on that. And yeah, he came up with that system, which leans on Blades in the Dark, Forged in the Dark.
Mm-hmm.
But it's very unique in its own way. So this is also not my forte. I'm really like in the narrative corner. But yeah, the system that they created on is quite unique, because there is not so many card-based system out there. Everything is dice.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that led to...
I was going to ask about
the
dice and the cards.
Rambling.
Yeah, no, go ahead. But I have questions about, because I never played with tarot cards TTRPG before. We played with dice, maybe some custom games like throw this, and if it hits, it's a critical success. But never with tarot cards. So how's like playing TTRPGs with tarot cards?
I think it's a very unique system in the sense of that, like, so essentially the game is split in between two different decks, two completely different things. Like, one takes all the smaller cards, also known as pip cards, and you use it for skill checks. So it also depends on what kind of class you're playing. Like some classes are fairly strong with like, for example, social interactions, and everything is associated to different suits. And other classes are associated with, let's say, cunning or actions. So that's one, and this is essentially what all the action of the game is based on. And then there is an entire different set of cards, and these are all the cards with like people on it and major arcana. And this is, I think this is like the most unique thing about it, although you could do it with pretty much dice as well, but it's just so much nicer with cards, that you have these so-called vision cards with which you can generate stories. So you can draw cards and say, what's at stake? You know, ooh, the end of the world might happen, the tower, and who is the person causing it? Oh, it's a hermit. You know, it's kind of like a sorcerer from a lone mountain. Who's my ally to fight against him? So there's a lot of story generative elements in that. And this is something that works really well with tarot cards because they have these huge spaces of resonance that you don't find so much when you roll a dice and it just says something. You know, you have a card, and the card gives you a lot of imagination. So what you can do with it much better than with dice-based system, in my understanding, is to do out-of-the-box adventures, improvise, do solo and journaling play, although that is not fully explored yet, I have to say. We're still improvising ourselves in that area. Yeah, it's not so great for, you know, hardcore battle systems. You know, I think if you want to battle, go and play Dungeons and Dragons, roll 20, roll 1, whatever works. It's not so like it feels like it feels more like it creates the story of a combat than it creates like you know, like exciting rolling actions. But this is for people who like story-based stuff. So yeah.
So it's more like a narrative tool rather than a action resolution, which the dice usually work as.
Well, it has an action resolution, but it's the way it's set up. I think it's not so action based. So it works a little bit more narration because everything is tied into the character. You know, like the cards that you're using is tied on how the character acts as well. So while it creates the resolution, the fights are also a little bit less, I would say, like roll 20 times here and roll 20 times there and another 50 times of rolling here, and I get like these typical dice rolls. I mean, I played a German system that was even worse. Like if you had high level characters, you could literally roll for like 1 hour if you would fight like some big demon or dragon and go like chipping away on that thing with your axe, and while he'd bite you, but everyone has like massive armor. This is not something that happens here, you know, because you only have like the maximum amount of rounds you can play against each other in a fight is 5. You know, there is literally not more cards that can be held in your hand.
Yeah.
Literally, normally it's 3 actually. Like 5 is a bit of a maximum case.
Yeah, I figured that generally in TTRPGs, you don't want like 20 turns on action scenes. Nobody's gonna have fun. It's better to have quick resolutions and fast-paced action than I'm doing 1 damage, but it regenerates 2 life, so this will never end. And so, since you're more the narrative designer of the project, I will dig your brain and your thoughts more. It's not exactly narrative, but it ties well. I think, personally, one of the defining factors for Horrible Hoard Your Peace and the Hidden Isle series in general is the beautiful aesthetics, design, and unique, really, illustrations and artwork it has. Can you tell me a little bit about the inspiration behind it and how it came up together?
So this is the work of Elliot Baum and Viv Tanner. And this is very much based on their own fascination of, I would say, there is an element of Viennese art in it. So there's like some sort of a reinvention of Art Nouveau, but not in a kind of a copying kind of way, but being on an inspiration level. And it's fairly easy to have that in Vienna because you can literally go to, it's the birthplace of this particular art. And we used to work together for quite a long time. Just them and the production and design team, the game design team. But now for the very first time, what you see on this page are essentially new artists. So this is also is a departure from our usual setup. Now Elliot and Viv are working as art director, and we are super lucky to have a lot of talent, new talent on board, because we're just like, this is just like the first step of a major escalation on like bringing new writers and bringing new artists on board. And yeah, there is an entire art book on it. It's called Sephiroth, the Art of the Board Game, where they go into great detail on which card was designed which way. It is also like a very slow process. So like a card like this, I don't know if you can, I'm just going to hold it into the camera.
Yeah, the Fool.
Getting a little bit blurred. The Fool takes up to 2 weeks, you know. It's not something we kind of
understand.
do out of thin air. Like some cards are faster, obviously the ones without people. But there's a lot of, this took a lot of time to make. There's such
yeah, it has a lot of detail
here.
Yeah.
So yeah, this is also the reason why they were like, we're not gonna do fully illustrated tarot, because otherwise we would still be illustrating the cards. So
I've seen it. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, and another reason why we wanted to do that is because we realized this is our USP, you know. We just go absolutely crazy on art. And we have a particular community that are also fans of Elliot and Viv and TTRPGs, and that works for us. That works for us, for our product, that works for us as creators, and I think that's something that comes together quite nicely.
I've seen some promotional material which you were using 8-bit art, which is something that is very uncommon in our realm of TTRPGs, because everybody's kind of afraid, no, I don't want people to confuse it with a 2D, arcade game or something. But it's beautiful. I've seen it on Instagram, and I would like to hear your thoughts about it and how come 8-bit? Pixel art. Sorry, pixel art. What I meant was.
Pixel art. Now you actually have to guide me to the particular picture that you actually mean, because now I'm also like a.
I've seen it on Instagram. Not sure if I'll find it fast, or is it anything right here? It's like this picture with the levels, which was in pixel art.
I'm scrolling.
I think it's not on your page though. Okay, maybe real quick, go to your Forever Hold Your Peace Instagram. It's not actually. What's the Instagram of your Causa Creations?
The Instagram of our project is. Oh, you mean Causa Creations in general?
Oh, so it's like a different department. So maybe.
Yes. So now I understand the confusion. So this is our main game. It's called Sephiroth game, and then Causa Creations is. I think I know what you mean. I even think I know which game you mean. It's called Totem Sound.
It's another game. Apologies, it was total confusion on my part.
No, don't worry. It is very, very confusing. Wait a second, my daughter is just like screaming at something. Oh, still sein, okay? Sorry, my daughter just.
No problem.
Doing stuff.
So it's like set in the same universe but a different game, or it's like totally different brands, and I'm confused.
It's a totally different branch. So we do digital games, and a lot of them are educational. This is also what we're doing with the Greek partners that I already mentioned before. We do serious games and games for museums and games for heritage sites, and then we do analog games to not get crazy about all the political topics we have to deal with in our digital games life. So the pixel art that you saw is from a game we did for a German museum a few years ago. Completely different branch, and we keep it totally separate from each other. It's also, we sit in the same room, and like me and my producer, we kind of work on both sides of the project, and then we have a generalist who kind of helps out, but so the departments are fairly separated. However, there might be a digital game in the future. So this is something that I can already vaguely foreshadow.
Okay, fair
At
enough.
one point,
And
we have all gonna.
apologies for the confusion to yourself and the audience, because again, I'm not a professional journalist or anything, so I haven't done much research.
I'm
But
confused myself. Don't worry about it.
But yeah, I'm following the Hidden Isle series for years, really, and well, you are very successful at Kickstarter. I personally consider you one of the top 5 overall best, across all the years, and not just necessarily number 5. It could be number 1, So
who the other 4 are. You have to let me know later on.
I have some questions for other rising contenders, should I say, like zinequesters, such as myself. Not just like the classic question, what's the secret behind success? No, I won't ask that, but I want to ask you if now, after running a few successful Kickstarters, having like your emailing list, your community, your support, do you sleep well before you launch a Kickstarter? Do you have stress, or it's all like a walk in the park every day in the office? These expressions.
No, it is my job to worry. Unfortunately, it is like every campaign is a campaign that we worry about because the numbers aren't automatic. Like we had 3,000 signups in one campaign and made 150,000 euros. We had 900 signups with another campaign and made 400,000 euros. And so the translation is fairly inaccurate. I think there's a few things that you can tweak. I am always nervous because I'm always like, everything go wrong. What happens if this happens? What happens if that happens? So the only thing that you can do is that you can essentially try to actually maximize your leverage. And this is really depending on what you're doing. I mean, I have to also say with zinequest, we are taking things easy. Zinequests are not projects where we put a lot of stuff in, but like a full disclosure, if we do something like the Hidden Isle, we invest 150,000 euros into the entire campaign.
Oh wow!
Like
this is not a zinequest budget at all. Yeah.
No. This is like a full-on development budget that you sometimes have from digital games. And for digital games would even be a small one. So we invest a lot of money that we were very lucky and privileged to actually gain in the Sephiroth campaign, which had a fairly small investment. I would say of like maybe 15 to 20,000 euros. And then we essentially had the funds available to run advertisement during the campaign as well. So, but still, we're still talking about like a medium 5-digit investment to like enter these campaigns. So we just were lucky that we had enough resources together because we were a company that already had like some work for hire, etc., with our other branches, and that meant that we could invest money to like gain it back and then accumulate particular resources. And even then, it's extremely volatile, with production and everything, and projects, and some projects succeeding and other failing. So it still doesn't feel like a stable source of income, in particular with like some of the digital projects being very complex.
So speaking of digital projects, I've seen in one of your stretch goals that you're going VTT. You're diving into the VTT realm. Can you tell me a little bit about what would be your VTT of preference, and what should we expect on that?
Well, I think there's a lot of people who are really into Foundry. And and we already had community members approaching us that have already experimented with that. So this is something we will also discuss with our community at the end of the day. So because this is something really that this is something the community needs, we don't have something where we go like, oh, this is the solution, is work for you because we know best. No, we don't have millions of players. We have a player base that is like so close to us that they can literally tell us to our faces what's best for them. And this is why we will essentially come together in the Discord and then find the best solutions. But what's really great is that we were already approached by some people and they were already saying like, hey, I made something, can we maybe look at that? And I'm like, sure, let's
that's
figure it
how
out together. I think that
Foundry community really works. It's usually like fans who create the modules, and then the creators comes in and inspect, I suppose. We are also using Foundry as our chosen platform and consider it's the best, especially if you want to homebrew stuff and create your own. If I may, because I scout the landscape of VTTs all these years, I think your type of game would need a VTT that can facilitate the tarot cards really well. So I've seen that Foundry definitely has some card implementations, but just now I'm thinking that something else like Tabletop Simulator, which is like more like 3D being on the table. I don't know if you've never seen, or tabletop, like something that's like tabletop based, which you can see the tarot cards in your face, like huge, and you can feel it. Maybe it would have a better it will translate better for your game. Just a recommendation out of the top of my mind right now.
Could be. So this is something that we will definitely consider. We were also approached by like a third one. I tried to actually look it up today, but I couldn't find their email. It was like another VTT that actually proposed to port the game into their system at one point. And for us, it's the more the merrier. But the absolute the key element for us is that we essentially find a solution that is best for the fans and that works best for them. So while also keeping, of course, like some core features like the aesthetics of the game going. I think the platform that you mentioned was also discussed, but someone said that it might be over the top, like in terms of like being 3D and too much, and that we might not need it. Like for me, the most important thing is that the user experience is the best. So it also requires some testing how the card handling essentially works, because that's a bit cumbersome. And so I'll see when we set up the testing, and we will not just make a solution and then throw it at their face. But I'll see when we set up the testing that maybe we can even try out like the top 3 solutions, test them, and then go like, okay, we're gonna go with this one because everyone prefers it, and it had like the best user experience because of whatever happens.
Yeah.
So this is something that we do because we're a digital games company. We test assumptions and then we see what happens.
So you have VTT ahead of you, video games. What else is in store for the future of the Hidden Isle series?
The video game is very far in the future. So, but what is actually closer is, and it's not a secret, that we are thinking about it for a long time, and we are a video game company, so of course we're dreaming of doing a Hidden Isle game, but get the resources to make a Hidden Isle game is of course something completely different. I mean, just for context, because sometimes people lack the context of like or the numbers to understand how expensive even small digital games are. Like to create an entire tabletop role-playing system from scratch and create a massive book with huge illustrations, high-end art. We're looking at 150 to 200K. You have the system, you have it tested, you throw in a little bit more, you run a campaign. In order to just develop, and that's the same money that you need to make a prototype for a small digital game. Because at least in Central Europe, it's so expensive you have programmers sitting for years at an end in front of stuff and nothing ever works, and then you use software like Unity, which is stupid and hates you. So it's very cumbersome. It's like there's so much ranting going on from our programmers with the digital stuff. It's hilarious. It's like, why is this wrong? Why is that wrong? Well, our designers are like, I don't know. It's like you don't run into these technical problems. It's just a completely different process. But yeah, so there's a third thing that I can mention, because we are planning a bigger Kickstarter later in the year. I don't want to go into full details yet, but we are planning a thick book that follows essentially up on the Hidden Isle. So it will be a second compendium with more resources, because people demanded more, and we shall give them more.
Yeah,
so
nice.
The scene for this year is already a little bit of a taste of what's to come, and we are very excited about that as well.
Sounds really fascinating. So basically, for you, running a zinequest is a side quest. Doesn't really stress you all that much or occupy all your resources and all your stuff.
Yeah. I mean, it's a little bit already. It's a bit in between, because what we are doing now for the second time is that we essentially have like a fulfillment cycle for one project, and then in the later phase of this fulfillment cycle, we are putting a zinequest in. So people essentially jump on board, and then they're getting the fulfillment. So in this case, it's the fulfillment of the September Kickstarter. Now we're doing it the second time. Last time it was with the Hidden Isle, now it was with Silver Seals, and next year we're probably going to do the same. So there's a lot of stuff already taken care of. But this is the big advantage that we're having, everything is set up. We have a warehouse, we have a printer, we have stock. We don't need to check if anything works. We have a tax advisor, which is very important to not die. So everything is set up and can just run. So then you can do the fun stuff. You can write the stories, create the art, have it printed, and then ship it out.
Congratulations, you sound like a flourishing enterprise. But let's get to the fun stuff. What's your favorite part of world building for this series of games?
So I'm really a lore person, and I really like the mix of like diving into like historical details and then expanding them essentially with our own flavor, like looking at like a for example, at like myths and sagas and fairy tales from particular regions, and then just switching it on, because in our world all of that stuff can obviously be real. What I'm also looking really forward to is to expand the world itself, because now we are looking at Europe, at the Middle East a bit, but we still have a lot of empty areas on the maps. There is a new world, for example.
Ooh,
there is
that sounds a nice expansion name, the New World.
The New World. Someone actually even wrote us about that. He was like very interested in writing like being a potential writer on that, and I'm very open to the concept of this entire colonization topic, to also get our in the New World, that is. I mean, also happens in the Indian Ocean quite a bit, to have that. And then of course it's a magical world, so there's like the fairy kingdoms, there's like the underworld, there's demons, there is a sort of a hell as well. So we have a very weird map somewhere that has it's like a hand-drawn map with all sorts of meandering. Here are the fairies, and then
is it somewhere on the page?
Then there's the kingdom of the gnomes. No, it's not. No, it's,
okay.
it's an internal document.
Okay.
But I really look forward to like leave the world in at least some of the adventures, and give people also a little bit of that flavor. So because it's also part of the lore, there's a sort of multi-dimensionality. There's a lost continent somewhere. there's like lands that existed before in the world, and for some reason they have vanished, like Atlantis, for example. And
Nice.
yeah, we have a super small side project where you can wander these lands.
Oh wow, you're full of projects.
Yeah, for the projects. So this is something that it's called Desolate Shores. Oh no, that was the first time. It's called actually Dream Shores. I'm gonna put it into the link, and then you can actually put a link as well. This is
Sure, I will put on the description. Yeah. So it's
a tiny bit of flavor to just walk around beyond the mists of Dioscoria. So
yeah.
No one remembers this name.
No, I actually had it on my mind, Discordia. So when you mentioned that you were working with other writers, me personally, as an entry noob level game designer and company runner and all that stuff, I haven't had the chance ever to work with another writer on my game and my stories, and I hope that day will come. But until then, how about you tell me how it's like having this creative process and essentially like giving the torch to someone else to carry on your world and your characters and your vision. So how's it like?
I think in this case it's like the first moment was quite easy because I gave it to James Patton, who I've been working with for a very long time. Like, he has been part of my work as an editor for about 6 years, and I knew exactly that he would take it into the right direction. And this year was quite peculiar because we asked Jordi Del Paco from Deconstruct team to join us as well as a writer, and we are actually fans of his work. And then he was like, "Oh my God, I'm actually a fan of your work."
Oh wow!
So that's suddenly we were like 3 writers in the room.
That's the best.
Yeah, he's a narrative designer, but who comes very from digital games. He made a game called Cosmic Wheel Sisterhood and Red String Club, so I think he's pretty known in that particular realm. What was very interesting actually a few days ago is that we started to talk about it then in the bigger circle, because we suddenly realized, also when our art director essentially quote unquote stepped in, we had a discussion about like particular themes that are very prominent in our games, on like how to present it to the world, and like if we want to, how grim it's gonna be, how hopeful, and essentially suddenly I realized it's not just me anymore. It's also not just James anymore. Now we are like 4 or 5 people. So now we essentially need to start working on the vision, and then you are in a completely different situation. Then you have a vision doc, and then you need to work on a story Bible, so to speak.
Yeah, like
so
the
story
Bibles,
Bible might need to expand beyond. Yeah. So it becomes a little bit more challenging, and I didn't realize that's something that we actually really need to look at, and we also need to really define that before we hit our next huge Kickstarter, because people need more iceberg material. We have these on the surface materials that are quite clear, but there's a lot of iceberg material that just is loosely associated and sits on shelves and in some Google Docs, and we now need to kind of clean all that up, because if you have if you have iceberg materials and you give it all this deep-rooted lore, you need to have that stuff together to share with your other writers. So that's fairly important, and this is something that we are now learning and preparing as well. But yeah, step by step, it's all very exciting.
I like that. So I don't want to take too much of your time. So how about you choose a final message for all the Forever Hold Your Peace and Hidden Isle fans?
Well, first of all, I want to really thank everyone who supported us, and because it's amazing that now this is our 5th Kickstarter and we are still feeling like that we are being carried and cherished, and it's also like seeing how vile and how aggressive sometimes communities can be, especially in gaming. I'm like so thankful that we have these respectful and friendly people, especially in our Discord. And I'm like, every time I'm interacting with them, I go like, oh, these people are just so nice. So this feels really good, and I'm really thankful for that. Yeah, and to the other creators out there, there's like one advice that I can give: go all in, like throw everything into the fray when you do a Kickstarter production. Maybe not in zinequest. Zinequest is a smaller thing. I think that's also what it is. But if you do a Kickstarter thing, just hammer it in.
Funny that you mention
There's no
it
need
because
for like smaller Kickstarters.
yeah, I'm contemplating these days a lot this all-in notion, and what it really comes down to, and all the sacrifices and the resources that you must allocate and decisions. Yeah, it's a wild ride, and thank you so much for sharing your wisdom. I will watch
Thank
it
you.
later over and learn more. And I wish you all the
you.
best for forever hold your peace. And
Thank you.
thank you for joining us. And hope you had fun.
I did. And again, thanks to everyone for backing us, and thanks for having me on the show.
No problem, Georg. So I have been your host and editor, John. Thank you so much for watching us. We have daily live streams every day for our run of our campaign. Metanthropes Anthologies is live. Forever Hold Your Peace is live. ZineQuest is live. So thank you everyone for joining us, and go out there and buy some zines. Stay legit, stay meta, everyone.